Alrighty, so for step one, we're going to turn this black paper into the frame for our sun catcher. You can see here I've laid out my plastic wrap nice and flat on my work surface. If you want to put some little pieces of tape on the corners to make sure it stays put, you can. But sometimes it kind of sticks on its own, so that's up to you. So what we're going to do with this black paper, that hole is there to help you get started on cutting. So what you need to do is stick one side of your scissors into the hole and start cutting this way up the side. Let me draw the line for you. All right, so now you can see here exactly where I'm gonna cut. If you wanna draw your lines on before you cut, you can, or you can just go for it. So go ahead and stick your scissors in the hole there. And we're gonna cut this rectangle shape out of the middle, so we'll be left with just a rectangle frame. Okay, so here you can see our frame, and then I have this big rectangle from the middle left over. Now what I want you to do is turn it this way, portrait style, and you're gonna cut this leftover rectangle into strips, okay? The strips can be about this wide, okay? Check that out. About as wide as my thumb or a little bit skinnier. About thumb size is pretty good. You can make your strips a little bit thinner. Okay, totally up to you, but cut this whole page, this whole rectangle into skinny strips that are about as wide as a finger. It helps for this project to have some strips that are really skinny and some that are a little bit thicker. It just kind of adds a little bit of variety to our project here in a little bit. So if you can, it's good scissor practice to try cutting some that are a little bit skinnier. Okay, but there's no perfect way to do this. So the main idea here is just to get a bunch of strips made. Now that we have all of our strips cut out, we are going to use these to add some horizontal and vertical lines in our frame. If you remember, Mondrian used lots of intersecting horizontal and vertical lines. And so it made lots of squares and rectangles. Lots of right angles like this. So you can see here, it's kind of made a rectangle here. This corner is a perfect 90 degrees. It's called a right angle because it makes just a perfect corner, like a square. So we're gonna be making some of those on our frame. We're gonna be making something that looks a little like this. And I know that looks super complicated, but I'm gonna show you how to do that. So what you need to do first is just grab a couple of your strips and we'll find a spot where you can do one vertical, like that, okay? Don't worry that it goes off the edge a little bit, that's fine, we'll trim it in a little bit. Now, you're gonna lay a couple strips on here. Maybe we'll do that vertical one and this horizontal, okay? Find something that you like, do one of each, okay? Once you have that, you can trim your strip so that it doesn't go off the edge anymore, like that. You want to make sure you leave enough that it overlaps your frame on both ends, because that's where we'll have to put a little bit of glue, okay? Same thing here. Make sure it overlaps something on both ends. So that one's good. Let me trim this one. Okay, if you want to grab a pencil, you can make marks to help you know exactly where to cut, but that's not necessary. You can do it if you want, but usually you can kind of just eyeball it. Put it on there and eyeball it. So once you get your strips figured out where you like them, maybe here, maybe up here, I don't know. Okay, figure out what you like, and then you're gonna need your glue. You can use a container of glue if you'd like, or a glue stick works, or a glue bottle. That's what I'm gonna be using today. If you wanna use the glue container that's in your kit, you can also grab that little paintbrush that's in there. It has a blue handle, like this one. You can grab that and dip this in the glue and use it to paint a little bit of glue on. If you do that, that's cool. Just make sure you wash this out because you're gonna need this brush for your other project. Okay, so once you have your strips where you think you might like them, this is another place where a pencil might come in handy if you want. You can make a little mark where the ends are gonna go. And then all you need is a very little bit of glue. If you are using a glue bottle, remember, just a dot, not a lot. Okay, that is plenty right there. And then you just lay your strip on. Okay, so go ahead and do that for both of your vertical and horizontal, first two. Once you've got your strips glued, you can see if they make right angles or not. You can see this one here is a little bit slanted. So you've got a little bit of time until your glue dries to give them a little scoot and help them make perfect right angles there, okay? We want to use, we want this to look like Mondrian's work, and he used lots and lots of right angles. So that's what we're going for today, okay? So before that glue dries, try to make sure it's nice and horizontal there and nice and vertical. Okay, so once you have a couple of those strips on, now is the fun part. Now you get to go in and do the same thing with some other strips. You can go all the way across your frame some more if you want, or you could just do a section like this, okay? Just make sure that if you trim your strips, make sure that it overlaps a little bit on both ends of the strip, okay? So this is a fun part. I like to do this without gluing. I like to just lay some strips on and kind of play with my arrangement and see what looks good. You can divide this up as much as you want or as little as you want. You might end up, let's see, how many do I have here? You might end up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 spaces, 7 different rectangles. That's fine. I will tell you though that this project looks really cool and works out a little bit easier if you divide it up even farther. So take your time and play with this. This is where I was saying if you cut some thinner strips, they're kind of fun to have because it just gives us some variety in our lines. Some of our lines are thicker, some of them are thinner. So yeah, give this a little play. Once you figure out some strips that you like, go ahead and trim them and glue them down, and then you can add more. You can see this one here. Let me get these out of the way real quick. You can see my completed frame here has a whole lot going on, okay? You don't have to get this detailed with it if you don't want, but it will look really cool if you do, and it's really not that hard. The first ones I did was this one and I think this one, my vertical and horizontal, and then I went in and did this one and these two. Maybe this was next, a couple of these, okay? Then you just go in and lay in even more in between some of the other spaces. These little ones here were some of my last ones that I did, just to give me even smaller little spaces in there. Okay, so take your time with it. Divide it up into a whole bunch of spaces, and remember we're only using horizontal like that and vertical. Okay, so that's going to give us those 90-degree, those right angles all over. Okay, so take your time, get it divided up, use thick lines and thin lines. If you decide that you want even thinner lines, you can take one of these strips and even cut it in half to give you some even thinner ones. Okay, so have fun with it, take your time, and when you get all glued, you are ready to scroll down for the next step where we add some color.